Pokemon mechanics can get weird, and some of this weirdness is well known. I'm sure many of you know that Regieleki can achieve such a high speed stat that it actually outspeeds Trick Room. Or that if Shaman Sky gets frozen, it transforms back to regular Shaman. But did you know that the Pokemon Nidoking can abuse a unique mechanic to land perfectly accurate Horn Drills? Horn Drill is a normal type attack with a very low 30 accuracy that will just straight up one-hit KO the opponent. These one-hit KO moves are banned in competitive singles formats, but in VGC doubles they're completely legal. They're not that commonly used though. With only a 30% chance to land, even though the upside is massive, these are just too risky to use reliably. But Nidoking here knows a dastardly little trick to make his Horn Drill perfectly accurate. If a poison type uses the move Toxic, it actually cannot miss, it is perfectly accurate. Toxic usually has 90 accuracy, but when used by a poison type, it is perfectly accurate. Why is this related? Well, what if we could somehow borrow that perfect accuracy on Toxic and apply it to another move, like Horn Drill? Well, it turns out that there is a roundabout way to do this. And this nasty trick involves a conspiracy with the Pokemon Oranguru, a known criminal. If Nidoking and Oranguru work together, the impossible can be made possible. You see, Oranguru has an interesting move called Instruct. And Instruct is a move that will simply force the target to repeat the last move that they used. This might sound similar to the move Encore, but it's different. When you target a Pokemon with Encore, they will be forced to use the last move that they used instead of the move they were intending to use. But Instruct will not do that. Instruct basically gives them an extra action on a turn. They will repeat the last move used whenever Instruct is executed, and then they will execute the move they originally intended to use as normal. Instruct is a very interesting move, and quite a good one in doubles. Oranguru is a pretty cool doubles Pokemon for this reason. But things get weird when you force a poison type to use Toxic via Instruct. Let's say Nidoking uses Toxic in a doubles game, and then on the next turn Oranguru forces Nidoking to utilize Toxic again with Instruct. Because Nidoking used Toxic through Instruct, the perfect accuracy is active, and therefore the next move that Nidoking executes will also have the same perfect accuracy that Toxic does as a poison type. Any move will have perfect accuracy, including Horn Drill, perhaps the best move to give perfect accuracy to. So this is how Nidoking can achieve a perfectly accurate Horn Drill. If it is forced to use Toxic from Instruct, the perfect accuracy from Toxic will trickle down to the next move utilized in the turn. Now, of course, in the actual context of a competitive battle, this is a pretty ridiculous series of events to set up and is probably overall not worth the trouble. But nonetheless, it is still a very fun little mechanical quirk. It's also worth noting that this only works in Gen 7, and will not work in later entries in the franchise, unfortunately. But I'll tell you what is fortunate. The fact that Rocket Money is sponsoring this video. Budgeting and saving are things many people want to take more seriously, especially in the new year. But manually tracking spending across multiple accounts can be difficult, and keeping track of everything often feels overwhelming. That's where Rocket Money comes in. Rocket Money allows users to securely link all of their accounts and view everything in one easy-to-read dashboard, giving a clear picture of overall financial health in one place. This makes it simple to see exactly where money is going and become more aware of spending habits. With alerts for large transactions and weekly spending reports, Rocket Money helps users stay on top of their financial activity and feel more in control of their finances. Rocket Money also makes it easier to track and cancel subscriptions. With so many subscriptions these days, it's easy to forget about ones that aren't even being used. Rocket Money keeps track of everything and helps users cancel unwanted subscriptions with just a few taps. Rocket Money is free to download, but you can get a free premium trial when you sign up with my link. Go to rocketmoney.com/JimCool. I'll also include the link in the description. Now let me ask you a question, folks. Are you familiar with the Pokemon Phalanx? You'd better be. Phalanx was voted the most artistically impressive Pokemon since Muck by a tribunal of connoisseurs. So anybody who knows anything is aware of the existence of Phalanx. Unfortunately, Phalanx is terrible in competitive, due to its low stats and competition from superior fighting types. But Phalanx does have a very unique signature move available to it, and that is the move No Retreat. No Retreat is a rather brave move, a very admirable move, that will raise all of this Pokemon's stats by 1 stage, and then trap the user on the field. After using No Retreat, you cannot retreat. You will fight until the enemy is vanquished or you are. Extreme bravery when using No Retreat. But the thing about No Retreat is that you can only benefit from these boosts once. You cannot keep using No Retreat, it will fail. So you can't repeatedly boost your stats by 1 over and over. I suppose they wanted to contain Phalanx and prevent it from being too powerful. Very understandable. But what if there was a way to bypass this unfortunate restriction on No Retreat? What if you could keep boosting stats from No Retreat somehow? Well, it turns out there is a way. The way No Retreat works is that first it will grant you the boosts. You will receive +1 to all your stats first. Then it will trap you on the field. And if you use it again, the boosts don't apply. But it seems that the restriction of using repeated No Retreats is somehow tied to the self-trapping effect within the move. So if you are already trapped on the field, the self-trapping effect of No Retreat will not execute, and therefore the restriction on how many No Retreats you can use will not take effect either. So if Phalanx is trapped on the field by a move like Block, and it uses No Retreat, the self-trapping effect of No Retreat will not happen because it's already trapped, and therefore it can keep spamming No Retreat to its heart's content. And No Retreat becomes the best boosting move in the game in this particular context. Whatever you do, do not click Block against a Phalanx, folks. You will pay the iron price for such a grievous error. But of course, this is a very specific set of events that has to happen to unlock Phalanx's full potential. Who the hell runs Block in this day and age? It's an uncommon attack. So the ideal scenario would be that Phalanx can trap itself on the field and then use No Retreat. Unfortunately though, Phalanx does not get any attack or move that traps itself on the field. So it cannot do this. But there is a Pokemon that can do this. The Pokemon that can learn any move in the game, of course. Smeargle. Smeargle is the only other Pokemon that can learn No Retreat, because it can learn anything. And if Smeargle has No Retreat and the move Jaw Lock, it can become a boost sweeper, funnily enough. Jaw Lock is an interesting attack that will trap both you and the enemy on the field, and this is kind of useful because you trap them and therefore can punish a passive opponent, preventing them from switching and allowing you to repeatedly spam No Retreat in their face. Because of course you are trapping yourself as well and disabling No Retreat's restriction. Smeargle can then No Retreat all the way up to full with maximum boosts at every single stat. And then it can use the move Power Trip, a powerful move that gains +20 base power for every single extra stat you have. In this context, it has an absurd 620 base power. Smeargle can also use the move Stored Power for the special side, and receive the same benefit, as Stored Power has the same effect, increasing its base power for every boost you have. The stars really have to align for you to actually pull this off though, I will say. Smeargle is a weak Pokemon, it's easy to just attack and defeat. Plus it has to use Jaw Lock and hope that whatever it's trapping is not powerful enough to KO it, that's a lot to ask. But in the right circumstance, this Smeargle right here can do the unthinkable, and it goes to show the powerful combination of No Retreat plus a self-trapping move. If Phalanx got Jaw Lock, we would be in a different world. We would be in a very different world. To be honest, I think that the restriction on No Retreat is a bit silly to begin with. Phalanx is already not that good. I say let him boost as much as he wants, personally. But that's a different debate altogether, isn't it? Who here would agree that mail is important for society? Delivering letters across a great distance seems valuable to people. In the Pokemon universe, mail also exists, and is a mechanic in the video games. You can attach some mail to a Pokemon, and then deliver the mail via trading the Pokemon to another trainer. There's all sorts of different mail designs with delightful little backgrounds for your letters. Look at all these. Beautiful. A wonderful little flavor mechanic for the Pokemon games. But mail also has a competitive application. Now you're probably thinking, what could a mere envelope provide to a combat situation? What in-battle effect would mail have? Does it grant you +1 speed so you can deliver the envelope faster? No, nothing like that. Mail has absolutely no in-battle effect as a held item with no effect whatsoever. Most of the time, running mail is as good as running no item at all, so why would you run mail as a held item on your Pokemon? Well, there is one thing that makes mail a little bit better than running no item at all, and that is that mail is immune to the effects of the moves Trick and Switcheroo. Trick and Switcheroo are good moves, pretty common in competitive actually, and what they do is they switch your held item with the opponent's held item. You can use this to give the enemy a disadvantageous item on purpose and ruin their career. This is common on choice Pokemon. If your Pokemon's holding a choice scarf or a choice band or specs, running Trick is a smart choice because you can give that choice item to an opponent, and especially a utility or defensive Pokemon will hate having a choice item. They'll be locked into just one move and won't be able to switch moves, severely reducing their mobility and utility. But if you're carrying the mail, you are impervious to being tricked. This is of course because those who work at the postal service are the most intelligent people in society and they cannot be tricked under any circumstance. It is also considered extremely immoral to steal somebody else's mail and read it. That's private information. So even Pokemon in a battle scenario will adhere to this strict rule of social etiquette and they will not look at somebody else's mail, even if it puts them at a disadvantage in combat. That's a line that these Pokemon do not cross. And therefore running mail on your Pokemon instead of something good like leftovers can be advantageous. The Pokemon Blissey sometimes uses mail so that it does not have to worry about being affected by Trick and granted a choice scarf or a choice specs that would debilitate its future. While most would consider mail to be useful for society, most people would consider robbery and thievery to be bad for society, taking somebody else's item for yourself illegally. Unfortunately, some Pokemon do resort to this tactic for a battle advantage. There is a move in the game called Thief that does exactly as the name suggests. It will take the enemy's item and bestow it upon the user. To use Thief, you have to not be carrying an item to begin with. You have to be itemless. And then when Thief is used, you will steal the enemy's item and take it for yourself. The move Covet also has the exact same effect, but is a normal type attack. Thief can sometimes be a good move in competitive. It has really been usurped by Knockoff in recent years, but some Pokemon do not get Knockoff, and Thievery is their only way to remove items from their opponent's pockets. But if you are using Thievery in battle, be careful of this mechanical interaction that is perhaps a form of karmic justice, manifesting to punish the thief. There is an item called Life Orb that enhances the damage of all of your attacks, at the cost of dealing a bit of recoil damage to you every single time you use an attack. If you thief this item and steal it from the opponent, on the turn that you thief it, you will take Life Orb damage, because Thief is an attack. But in a cruel twist of fate, Thief will not benefit from the damage bonus of Life Orb. You see, when Thief executes, the damage is dealt, then the item is stolen, and then at the end of the turn the recoil is applied. So because of the order of operations, you simply take damage with none of the upside from the Life Orb that you have just stolen. This is a great and intended mechanic from the developers to represent that thievery can only damage yourself with no benefit. However, if you were to knock off an enemy's item through brute force and slap them so that their item falls off, that's fine. There's no downside whatsoever to that. Now folks, allow me to give you some advice here that is actually useful and may save you in a battle context. Many of this funny trivia so far is intriguing, but it's doubtful that much of this will actually occur in a real battle scenario. This one, though, may happen to you, and with this knowledge you might just win a battle you otherwise wouldn't have won. The move Psyshock is a popular move in competitive Pokemon. It is a Psychic-type special attack that deals damage to the enemy based on their defense stat rather than their special defense. This is useful because it basically acts as a physical attack, but it doesn't require you to have any physical attack yourself. And it is excellent as a special attacker to be able to threaten special walls, as their physical defense is usually not very high. It's a great move against Pokemon like Clodsire and Blissey, who have very low defense. Clodsire especially, because it's weak to Psychic. You are probably also familiar with the screen mechanics. Reflect and Light Screen are moves that shield your team from incoming damage for 5 turns. Light Screen will shield your team from special attacks, while Reflect will shield your team from physical attacks. Now, if you are a Pokemon with Psyshock, you might be wary to use Psyshock if your opponent has Reflect up, because intuitively it may seem that Reflect increases your opponent's defense stat, or their team's defense stat, since it's reducing physical damage. But actually, Psyshock will deal the same amount of damage against Reflect as it always would. And this is because Reflect does not increase your team's defense stat, it just reduces damage from incoming physical attacks. Psyshock may deal damage based on the enemy's defense stat, but it is still a special attack, and therefore Reflect will not reduce its damage. So if you see an enemy with a Reflect active, and you think that this will reduce the damage from your Psyshock, think again. You might just win the battle off of this esoteric information. On the flip side, if the enemy has Light Screen up, and you select Psyshock, it will reduce the incoming damage, so be wary of that. You might get caught off guard by that one. Prankster is one of the best abilities in Pokemon. This excellent ability will grant priority to all moves that are not attacks. There are many great applications of this. Priority Tailwind in doubles, status moves with priority on them, healing with priority. And one interesting application is using the move Sleep Talk with priority. Sleep Talk is a move that allows you to use one of the moves on your moveset randomly while sleeping. It is one of the few ways in the game to perform actions while you are sleeping. The reason this is great on a Pokemon with Prankster is because it allows you to grant priority to attacks that would not otherwise have priority. If Sleep Talk calls any attack, it now has priority on it. Grimmsnarl could use this on an interesting set involving Bulk Up, Rest, Sleep Talk, and the attack Spirit Break, which is a fairy-type physical attack. If Sleep Talk happens to call Spirit Break, it will be executed with priority, which is very powerful, because Spirit Break is a great fairy-type attack. But there is one problem. And I never realized that it worked like this, actually, but if Sleep Talk is boosted by Prankster and calls an attack, and the attack is executed against a Dark type, the Dark type will be completely immune, and it will deal 0 damage. Dark types are completely immune to being affected by Prankster moves. And I knew this already. You can't Thunder Wave, or Toxic, or Status a Dark type if that status move was boosted in its priority by the ability Prankster. But I didn't realize that this also extends to Sleep Talk. Because if you think about it, Sleep Talk is not the move they are getting hit by. Sleep Talk is just a way to execute another move on your moveset. So I wouldn't expect that the Spirit Break called from Sleep Talk here in this context would also be completely ineffective against Dark types, but that is how it's programmed. Dark types are immune even to attacks executed from Sleep Talk by a Prankster Pokemon, which in the context of this Grimmsnarl set is a disaster, as their whole strategy will be completely ruined by a simple Dark type Pokemon. Now folks, as a Pokemon YouTuber, I feel as if every single day that goes by on this earth, I discover a new mechanical quirk in the Gen 1 Pokemon games that I have never heard of before. The amount of absurd mechanical quirks in Gen 1 is honestly impressive at this point. These games are so janky that it kind of wraps around into pure brilliance. I have recently learned of a mechanical quirk in Gen 1 involving the move Explosion. Explosion is a powerful move that will deal a massive amount of damage and sacrifice the Pokemon that executes the move. Even though you have to pay the ultimate price to use this attack, it can be worth it, especially if you're low health anyway and you're probably going to die soon. Go out with a bang rather than a whimper. This is a very common move in Gen 1, and a great way to trade with an enemy, eliminating a key defensive piece so that you can sweep. But the way that Explosion interacts with Substitute is something I never knew before. Substitute in Gen 1 is quite weird, actually. It will shield you from incoming damage, and the Substitute will take the damage, as you probably expect. But Substitute in Gen 1 does not grant status immunity like it does in later generations. And also, if you use Explosion or Self-Destruct against a Substitute, for some reason, your Pokemon will not sacrifice themselves. They will be perfectly okay. They might turn invisible because the game thinks that they are gone, but they are not gone. That is just your eyes deceiving you. They are actually quite relieved to still be alive, I imagine. For some reason, if you click Explode against a Substitute, it just doesn't KO Self, which can actually be useful in competitive. Sometimes Pokemon like Rhydon or Alakazam will use Substitute, and this is a way to just get rid of their Substitute safely, without incurring a punishment that would usually be applied to exploding. So if you're playing Gen 1 OU and you're trying to predict an explosion with Substitute to get a free KO, don't do it. Do not do that. You will be very upset at the result, I'm sure. As the piece of plush merchandise that you place in front of yourself for defense, at the cost of some of your life force, is blown to smithereens in front of you with no repercussions for the opponent who did so. An injustice all around, really. I'm not exactly sure why this happens. Perhaps something about the Substitute getting eliminated that cancels the rest of the turn happening? Or maybe a plush figurine is not considered a real thing, so therefore the terrible cost of exploding is not required of you any longer because the entity that you have exploded is not even real. I have also discovered another Gen 1 mechanic even more insane than this one. I'm sure you're familiar with the distinction between poison and bad poison in Pokemon. Regular poison simply deals a set amount of damage to the enemy every single turn, a basic damage over time effect, while bad poison, inflicted by the move Toxic, has a ramping effect. Every single turn that the poison deals damage, the amount of damage dealt is doubled, punishing the enemy from staying on the field for too long, as slowly but surely they will take more and more damage and eventually perish. This is basic knowledge. But did you know that in Gen 1, you can not only badly poison the opponent, you can badly burn the opponent? What a frightening idea. And badly burning the opponent has the exact same effect. They will take a ramping amount of damage, just like toxic poison or bad poison will ramp up every turn. But the way that you apply bad burning is not straightforward. There's no move that applies this effect. It is actually the result of an interesting glitch that is quite complex to execute. If you badly poison an opponent with Toxic, and then they heal this bad poisoning by using Rest, which does heal status, and then after they wake up, they get burned by an attack, like Fire Blast, then they will be badly burned. The burn damage they take will ramp the exact same way that Toxic poison ramps every single turn. I believe the reason for this is that in Gen 1, when you heal Toxic poison, the counter that determines how much the poison is going to deal in damage, the one that ticks up and deals more damage the longer you are in, does not actually reset when you heal the poison. It is still active in the background. So if you were to also apply Toxic poison again, it would not start from the beginning. It would still have the same amount of ramped damage it was at previously before it was healed off. And for whatever reason, this crosses over to burn damage. Perhaps Burn's damage over time effect is implemented the same way that Poison's is in the back end, and therefore it uses the Toxic counter in the same way to determine ramping damage. Even though it's Burn and not Poison, the same counter that determines the ramping damage is applying to Burn in this absurdly specific scenario. We can be thankful that this is the only context where bad burning exists. Realistically, this will never happen in a battle. I personally do not want my Furret to get badly burned, and I'm glad that this is impossible. I'm glad that my Muck will never experience bad burning in its entire life. And the final crazy mechanic I'd like to talk about today involves the ability Contrary, one of the strongest abilities in the game. Contrary is an ability that will invert all stat stage changes, so if you were to lose stats, you instead gain them, and vice versa. If you were to gain stats, you will instead lose them. This is very powerful, because a lot of moves have stat lowering as a built-in drawback, like Leaf Storm. When you use Leaf Storm, it has a massive power, but the drawback of lowering your special attack. But if you have Contrary, that drawback turns into another advantage, and Leaf Storm becomes one of the best attacks in the game. This is exactly what Superior can do, one of the most famous Contrary Pokemon. Superior with Contrary can use Leaf Storm, get the benefit of that massive base power, and then also gain a +2 special attack boost after using it. An extraordinarily powerful combination. Perhaps you are familiar with the item Weakness Policy. Weakness Policy is a cool consumable item. If you are struck by a super effective attack while holding a Weakness Policy, it will consume the item and then provide a +2 boost to your attack and special attack. A cool way to reverse the situation when struck by a super effective move and use this against the opponent. Dragonite likes to use this item since it is good at stomaching incoming super effective hits quite well. You might think that this item would be a good choice on Superior, but you would be incorrect, of course, perhaps for a reason you've already put together. Superior has Contrary, which inverts its stat stage changes, so if it gets struck by a super effective move while holding a weakness policy, it will lose special attack and attack instead of gaining it. How terrible. So whatever you do, do not put weakness policy on your Superior, unless you happen to invite the very specific circumstance where you would still get the weakness policy boost, and then also be able to maintain the benefits of Contrary afterwards and click Leaf Storm and still gain special attack from that. If you could only disable Contrary for that exact moment that you want to get the weakness policy boosts, and then resume the effects of Contrary afterwards, that would be perfect, wouldn't it? Well, there is a specific instance where exactly that happens. If Superior is holding a weakness policy, has the ability Contrary, and is struck by a super effective move from a Pokemon with the ability Mold Breaker, the weakness policy will boost its stats as intended. And then once it uses Leaf Storm, Contrary will still be active and it will also gain extra special attack. The best of all worlds. This is because Mold Breaker is an ability that ignores enemy abilities while attacking. Mold Breaker is often an advantageous ability used to hit Levitate Pokemon with ground moves, for example. But in this context, it's disadvantageous. You are attacking the enemy and disabling their ability while attacking. And because they're holding a weakness policy, Contrary is disabled at the same time as the weakness policy actually executes, and therefore they will gain the stats instead of what would usually happen while they have Contrary, inverting the stats. If someone actually pulled this off in a real battle, I would be quite amazed. But I do think it's a fun interaction, and reminds me that Mold Breaker often works in ways that I don't necessarily expect. Much like Sheer Force, it is an ability that often surprises me in the interactions it can create. In conclusion, Pokemon is weird, mail is valuable, and thievery is immoral. These are the takeaways from this video. Do you agree or disagree? Which was your favorite funny mechanic? What would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.